Greetings and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. My name is Gennady Stoliarov II, and I am the chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Here we hold conversations with some of the world's leading thinkers in longevity, science, technology, philosophy, and politics. Like the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, we aim to connect every field of human endeavor and arrive at new insights to achieve longer lives, greater rationality, and the progress of our civilization. Greetings and welcome to our virtual Enlightenment Salon of February 13th, 2022. Today, we will be having a discussion on longevity activism. I am looking forward to it considerably. And joining us, we have an illustrious panel of U.S. Transhumanist Party officers and members. We have our Director of Visual Art, Art Ramon Garcia. We have our Legislative Director, Jason Geringer. We have our Director of Applied Innovation, David Shoemaker. And we have our Technology Advisor and Foreign Ambassador from Spain, Dr. Jose Cordero. We also have our Northern California Liaison, Celeste Castaldo. And joining us as our guest of honor is Dr. Ilia Stambler, who is the Chief Science Officer and Chairman of VETEC, which is Hebrew for seniority. It is the movement for longevity and quality of life in Israel. He received his PhD at the Department of Science, Technology, and Society at Bar Ilan University in Israel. His research is focused on the historical and social implications of aging and life extension research. He is also involved in mathematical modeling of aging and aging-related diseases. He is the author of the books A History of Life Extensionism in the 20th Century and Longevity Promotion, Multidisciplinary Perspectives. And I would highly recommend both of these books, Longevity Promotion, Multidisciplinary Perspectives, and A History of Life Extensionism in the 20th Century. I'll share links to them as this conversation advances. So 10 years ago, by January 2012, Ilia Stambler completed his PhD thesis, which then became A History of Life Extensionism in the 20th Century, and co-organized the first demonstration for life extension on January 20th, 2012. And since then, he has become fully involved in longevity or life extension activism. 10 years before that, around January 2002, after completing his MA degree, Ilia Stambler started to work as a science writer in biotechnology and co-created the first multilingual site on life extension. And so he became partly involved in longevity or life extension activism since that time. And of course, 20 years is a tremendous length of time to be involved in our movement. And Ilia has a unique perspective to share on how the movement has developed, how his own role in it has developed over time, and what challenges we have overcome, what challenges remain, what opportunities are available to us now that might not have been available before. So Ilia, thank you very much for joining us. And please tell us more about your history of longevity activism and what you have observed, what lessons you have learned from it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gennady. It is a pleasure to be here among fellow longevity activists. When we started about 20 years ago, I'm not sure longevity activism was even an accepted term. People talk with their friends here and there, but there wasn't an actual movement. We started gathering at life extensionist forums, internet forums like Immortality Institute and others, and that's how it grew. So actually, I witnessed the building of this movement from the seed. Of course, people were involved in life extension advocacy many years before, probably centuries before, but there's an actual social movement, I would say, that it started in front of our own eyes. And I'm very privileged to be able to take a part of it, to take an active part of it. And I can just say that it is really like you see, it is growing. Now, if 20 years ago people actually didn't understand what we were talking about, life extension. What is life extension? Who are you to talk about life extension? Now people understand that aging can be, most people, not all of them, but a larger proportion of people understands that aging can be subject to medical intervention, that human life can be extended, that healthy human life can be extended. And I hope that at least some of our effort contributed to this change of paradigm. But of course, it's too early to rest on any laurels. We still have a lot of work to do. We have to be humble. We really need to understand how far we're yet from the actual achievement of our goals, the actual healthy human life extension for ourselves, for our close ones, for the entire population. So we still have a lot of work to do. And I expect the next 20 years to be very intense and intensive toward that purpose, at least for myself. At least I hope I'll still be active and capable enough to continue to contribute. So that's what I wanted to say as an opening statement. Happy to address more specific questions or topics.
Yes, thank you very much, Ilia, for that opening statement. And it does appear to me that progress has been made in terms of longevity, activism, altering the mindsets of a lot of people toward greater receptiveness toward life extension technologies. I remember in 2004, which was when I started in the movement after reading the works of Aubrey de Grey and then Max Moore and then Ray Kurzweil, whenever I raised the prospect of radically lengthening human lifespans beyond the current known maximum of 122 years, I would be met with responses to the effect that this is science fiction, even by people who would have considered it to be desirable. But now, when I speak with people about it, I would say approximately 50% of the people whom I encounter receive it with some mild enthusiasm. There are still very few people who are ardent supporters of radical life extension, the kinds of people who would be willing to become activists like ourselves. However, most people, I think, at least have their minds open to it. And even if they are skeptical or opposed to radical life extension, the arguments that they will make engage the subject in a way that I wasn't really observing very much in 2004. So, Ilia, I'm curious if those are your impressions as well, and what sorts of predominant responses or distribution of responses do you encounter when you speak with people in the general public about radical life extension?
Well, first of all, there's always a tactical situation where you have to distinguish when we talk about radical or not so radical life extension. My explanation is always that I don't make any dichotomies between the two. I believe this is the continuum. Right now, we understand that practically we don't have the technology to extend life even significantly, but it does mean that a more significant life extension is not possible. So that's an argument we have to keep in mind and make as necessary. So what we mostly argue for practically is the extension of healthy longevity, the extension of health span, amelioration of the aging process. But I never conceal the more far-reaching goals like extending life and healthy life significantly. But I just say that it is not the present immediate goal. It more on the horizon as a possibility, is something we could strive for. So then, of course, the argument indeed changed. First of all, they still raise the topics of for population and boredom and why do we need it. But now it's really shifting toward a more practical direction. How do we achieve it? What do we actually have to do? So that's actually the questions I mostly encounter right now. Okay, fine. It is possible. It is desirable. What do we do? So still there is a greater acceptance that yes, it is possible to extend healthy life. Yes, it is desirable. But still there is a little involvement, little practical involvement, even among people who do realize that it is possible, even among activists, let's be frank. there is still little individual involvement. People still have jobs to do. So when it comes to actual action, even our supposed supporters, they're not so active, so involved. And that's where I see the direction of future development for activism. To really, if we were able to shift the balance from negation, from opposition toward greater acceptance, I believe we will now need to shift it more toward more action, toward more results. So that, I think, it will be the task for the next 20 years. But generally, definitely, we see much greater acceptance. And I think that there are two reasons for this great acceptance, maybe more than two reasons. First of all, the technology does develop whatever we do. 20 years ago, we didn't have all the things, even access to internet was not so widespread as it became later. And then definitely we hear about advances in biology of aging almost every day. So all this builds up toward public acceptance. And also, I believe also our activism, also advocacy, played a part. When you talk to people, first it's a few people, then we talk to the press, then we talk to large gatherings, even to the government. Now, from meetings of 5 people that we had in the beginning of the century, we now organize committee meetings in Knesset. We talk with the members of the government. We help advance policies. So I believe there is a huge development also in this area, also in terms of advocacy, not just pure science, but science and advocacy combined. So I'm hopeful, but still it's never fast enough. We still need to remember the ultimate goal, the ultimate achievement, and we're not there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. And the ultimate goal, of course, needs incremental steps in that direction to accomplish. And I'm very glad that you emphasize the continuity of these approaches, that there really is no bright line to draw between the ordinary practice of medicine and radical life extension, because medicine has so greatly improve the length and quality of human life already, and it would be arbitrary to say that, we should stop here with the current conventional approaches and not innovate further, when all of human history has been characterized by innovation in these realms. But I definitely agree there is also a long way to go. Nonetheless, we do have enthusiasm among our loyal viewers. Daniel Twet writes, "Transcending death will always remain an immortal proposition." Thank you, Daniel. And our friend Didier Cornell says, "Thanks for the reminder. The greatest book about the history of life extensionism is Ilia's book, A History of Life Extensionism in the 20th Century. Didier believes it is compulsory to take a look if you are interested in life extension." And indeed, I read the book with great interest back when it was published, and I myself wrote a short review of it, which I will share soon. But first, I wanted to ask you, Ilia, so if you do encounter a person who says, all right, let's grant that radical life extension is feasible and desirable, what steps should be taken next? How would you answer that question?
Well, that's still a tough one for me. I wish I had any recipes. I wish I could give orders to people. I never give orders. I just hope to inspire people to think more about the topic, to get engaged. I believe that if we pose this goal of healthy life extension to ourselves, we'll ourselves seek and find ways to advance it. So everybody's circumstances are different. So I believe that if we propose this general goal, that everyone in his own or her own circumstances will advance it in their way, and there could be multiple forms for that. So generally, I do argue for the need to get more interested, to learn more, to study more. So that the general forum of advocacy, for example, the organization I'm involved in, like International Longevity Alliance, International Society on Aging and Disease, we just encourage people to start their own groups, their own organizations, and be autonomous. but we all together combine toward a common purpose. So first thing is just get organized, start your organization with the goals that you consider feasible for your circumstances. So that's the first thing. We need to build the core organizations. That's the basis of the movement. Like in every social movement, we need to build the core. Hopefully, even the professional core, but in many cases, it's not possible yet. But at least an enthusiast core of our organizations, registered organizations that can advocate at various levels. That's the basic need we have to advance. And then there are also policies that we advocate. Even a few years ago, we've formulated some policies as a part of the International Society on Aging and Disease agenda, entitled The Critical Need to Promote Research of Aging to Improve Health and Longevity. It was translated to 12 languages, submitted to several governments, quoted over 200 times in scientific literature. And there we have a set of policies that I believe can be applicable everywhere, almost universally in every country, with some adjustments. First of all, we need to increase funding for this research. We need to provide incentives for this research, and first of all, to provide measurable indicators for improving health and longevity. We also need to improve institutional support, basically meaning we need more social structures, more institutions to be involved in it. And that's the very basic framework that we advance, and it can take various forms in different countries, different organizations. For example, here in Israel, we use almost the same elements, the same principle to advance health longevity, to include it into the Israel National Master Plan on Aging. Back in 2019, in 2018, we organized a couple of committee gatherings in Knesset of the Science and Technology Committee, of the Committee for the National Master Plan on Aging, and we introduced those very topics of institutional support, of funding, of education for health and longevity as a part of the Israel National Master Plan on Aging. Let's be frank, it still remains on paper. It hasn't become any actionable strategy for Israel, especially now. If it was adopted in 19, and then everything shifted toward COVID priorities. But still, it's there, and the same experience can be replicated everywhere. So that's the basic structure for advancing longevity activism that I would propose.
Yes, thank you very much, Ilia. And that does sound like a very rigorous approach that I think in the long term is going to bear significant fruit and has begun to bear significant fruit already. Now, I do want to mention the extremely generous super chat by Flying Donkey 420. I am deeply grateful to you, Flying Donkey 420, who says that this is his gift to great Gennady and to the community. Thank you. We are honored on behalf of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. We will put these funds to good use. And I would say, Ilia, this is a good question to continue the discussion on, because right now, pro-longevity organizations generally have fairly modest budgets. We don't generally benefit from the philanthropy of multi-billionaires, though occasionally a crypto millionaire or crypto billionaire might make a large donation to a research organization. But particularly for activism and advocacy types of organizations, we really mostly have ourselves and our time. And if we can get some modest donations, that's great. We'll put them to use. But how would you envision growing that potential funding, and what would you say would be the best uses of that funding in terms of activism and advocacy?
Yes, these are indeed essential questions for the growth of our longevity movement. Indeed, it is. First of all, we need to realize ourselves, and we need to help others realize the need to fund longevity advocacy. Because in experience in those 20 years, people, if they do wish to fund life extensionism, they prefer to fund specific projects when they hope to see a very concrete product the end of the pipeline. Even in the specific time period. Usually 5 years you have to promise them to have appeal, so that's what people with money are usually willing to fund, and it is quite difficult to explain to them that actually also longevity advocacy is valuable, in terms of bang for the buck, even more valuable that for the actual success of the cause of the healthy life extension, more valuable than actually investing the same amount in a particular research project. And I can give an example from Israel here with almost zero fund through our pure enthusiasm, through our pure advocacy. We brought, I believe, about $20 million in funding for aging research through various calls for research proposals from the Ministry of Science, from other sources. With zero investment into advocacy, you can get millions for research, and that's our goal. To stimulate research everywhere. In the country, internationally, we also were able to help raise funds for international collaboration, for example, between Israel and the UK, the so-called BIREX Aging, Britain-Israel Research and Academic Exchange on Aging. So I believe also a very worthy value for advocacy to advocate for international collaboration, even in terms of science, and can be even more fruitful than stimulating in a particular country. Because of cross fertilization, because of exchange. So if you advocate for a program, it's better be an international collaboration. So it is valuable, but the funders don't understand it. But they should. Even if we have an anti-aging pill tomorrow, and you don't have the society ready for it, people will simply not take it, not buy it. They will say aging is natural. We shouldn't invest in prevention. We should only care about people at the final stage. All kinds of usual societal reasons to reject an emerging technologies. An emerging technology, and we have to make funders realize that our work is valuable, and they'll get not they, but the entire society will get an impact for their donations, for their funding. But it's not easy. Here in Israel, we were able to raise some funds. I believe I raised about $70,000 from donors. And the best way, to your question, the best way I think to spend them, basically the longevity activist organization can do two basic things. One thing is create gatherings. Another thing is create publications, and sometimes they're interlinked. You make a gathering, you produce a publication from it, or you produce a gathering to order publication. But these are the two types of work a longevity organization could do: publications and gatherings. And in terms of gatherings, I believe we were quite effective. We organized several international, based in Israel, but several international gatherings of high impact. The last one was in 2019 at Weizmann Institute, which was already co-sponsored with NIH, with the Nat and Shock Institute. So it was, quite a long way that we did in those 20 years up to the Weizmann Institute and sponsorship of the NIH with participation of several representatives from ministries like Ministry of Science and the Ministry for Innovation. So it was quite a pinnacle for us in 2019, this gathering, and as a result of it, it also encouraged a call for research proposals, a few $1 million for the field. Gatherings, high-level conferences are very effective. If you do it right, if you bring the right people, if you make the right social relations, it is very effective. I found, But even small gatherings are very effective from the start. What we did from the start, from the 18th century, we gathered our allies, friends. We had a series of seminars. In Bar-Ilan University from about 2004 to 2010, and that helped build the life extensionist movement in Israel. Even if it's a few people at a gathering, it helps build up the community. So that's the gatherings, and publications also very important. Online publication as much as possible. Also go to the press, and all this costs money. Basically, that's the argument. We do what we can, and we're quite successful even without significant funding. But with funding, we can do much more. And they should understand that, not just the rich donors, but also, the public. It's in their interest to help us develop for their sake, to help us to help them, basically.
Yes, indeed. Help us, help them. And John H. writes that through these kinds of advocacy and activism approaches, what he expects to happen is a slow build at the beginning in fits and starts. Then as successes start to appear, faster and faster progress, then a geometric progression and maybe even a logarithmic one. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yes, I would agree. There is certainly an acceleration in our success. Once again, in the beginning of the century, there were 5 people at the meeting. Not much press on the internet. And now it's in the press, and we're in Knesset. We're actually it's even if you say you are transhumanist, at least in Israel, it's not something dangerous to say. I often identify as a transhumanist, but it's considered normal here. So yes, definitely there is a growth, but once again we have to keep things in proportion. We have to keep the final goal in mind, the actual achievement of healthy longevity for actual people, because whatever amount of press will probably not bring us actual healthy life years. So that's where we need to aspire, and we are not there by far. I would say that a great progress was made in terms of actual healthy life extension in these 20 years. Yes, in terms of advocacy, definitely we are much more powerful. But in terms of actual life extension, I would say we are far from achieving any significant result. Yes, there are many important advances in science, but we actually need to bring it to people. So we always have to be humble, always have to be hardworking. And also another point, that people make: when will it happen? Give us a time frame. It is important to emphasize it's all in our hands. We can make things better or worse. We can actually, right now, life expectancy is decreasing in many places. United States, it started even 5 years ago. So it's not written in stone, this progress, this improvement in the longevity. It's all in our hands. So there are no actual magic date like 2045 or some other date. It's it depends on us, on our abilities, on our intellectual capacity, as well as resources, as well as material resources.
Yes, I completely agree that it depends on us, and all of the time frames are contingent on human engagement with this cause and human action to help bring the desired outcomes of increased longevity about. So there's no inexorable law of history that says it will absolutely happen, even if you do nothing about it. You have to do something to bring about these kinds of outcomes. So we have now quite a vast array of questions for you, Ilia. To start with, I will let Jose Cordero pose his question.
Well, Ilia, excellent to see you. And I admire the work that you do, both advocacy and writing. By the way, I quote you extensively on your book about life extension because I think it is a masterpiece. So in my best-selling The Death of Death, now in 6 languages, I quote you a lot about all the things that you have really researched and in a way discovered and put into a book that must be spreading more and more. So my first question is about writing. Which other books or articles are you working on right now? That is number one. And number two, maybe you could clarify a little bit what is the current situation of the International Classification of Diseases at the World Health Organization. Since you have been also active on that, if you could give us an update, what has changed now in 2022, and will there be further changes? What is the situation now for the layman and laywoman in the street, please?
A great question. Thank you very much, Jose. Indeed, thanks for recommending my book. I'm also quite proud of it. It is about 2,000 reference notes, and that basically covers the history of longevity research in all the major Western areas: Europe, Russia, United States, the United Kingdom. So highly recommended. Thank you. And what I'm working on right now in terms of writing, once again, writing is one of the major activities that one can undertake in terms of advocacy, activism. That's what we can do, even with a very low cost. Somebody even said, I don't remember who, if you want to change the world, learn to write. Learn to write effectively. So I believe the power of writing, even if it's for a small audience, it can bring incremental impact. So I've been quite active in writing articles in this last 3 years. I believe in these 3 years I published about over 30 academic papers, book chapters, articles on various subjects. Some of them are encyclopedia entries in the Encyclopedia of Gerontology and Population Aging, in Encyclopedia of Biogerontology, on medical ethics, on history, on all kinds of topics. One of the topics was longevity activism, so I actually put it in the encyclopedia. It's a word. So that's part of things. Also try to be involved in some actual research. For example, we did a joint study on the use of mesenchymal stem cells against COVID. Once again, it's connected to aging, because mesenchymal stem cells can be used sometimes as an anti-aging treatment. So actually, as aging as the main risk factor for COVID, also anti-aging treatments can help mitigate the COVID crisis. So that's the point I've been working on a lot for the last 2 years. Published a few papers on that. One was a position paper together with some of the leading authors like Nir Barzilai, Philip Sierra, Matt Kaberlein, that was entitled Geroscience in the Age of COVID-19. We jointly make this point that if we really want to combat COVID, we need to also address aging, to look for anti-aging means. So that's been my one of my major points during this time, and also on kinds of side issues. For example, together with my colleague, my collaborator, Dr. David Bloch, we keep working on developing methods to evaluate aging health. He is an expert in information theoretical methods of bioinformatics for aging. I just help with biological interpretations, but still we work together effectively. So we published a few papers on that, on early diagnosis of falls, of hip fractures from blood biomarkers, all kinds of things. Everything I can lay my hand on, I try to get involved, because you can never do too much for life extension. I'm just sorry, and I'm not capable enough, don't have time enough to do as much as possible. But hopefully, at least it will be some contribution. So that's about my writing right now. And also, by the way, I also keep writing some popular articles, write in my blog, in my sites. Also important, to popularize the field. Always, all kinds of writings will be good. And now the big one, what's going on with the ICD. Also happy to have been involved. Actually, in 2012. We made our first, I would say, foray into Knesset. Before that, we gathered in small groups, published online. But in 2012, we started actually going to Knesset and talking with actual Knesset members. And our first initiative was to declare aging a disease. We suggested establishing a national committee to fight the disease of aging, to improve health and longevity. It's all on record, in the press and on websites. So we wrote to all the 120 members of Knesset. Actually, they agreed, yes, it is very important to ameliorate aging, to improve longevity. But two things. First, they didn't do anything about it. And the second thing, they told, please don't call aging a disease because people will be offended. So we started this campaign back in 2012, and I'm happy that the topic developed and grew, and many people, I wouldn't say joined, but you can say joined, but actually it was both a concerted and separate efforts, actually reinforcing each other. There was this special issue led by Alex Zhavarankov about recognizing aging disease, special issue in Frontiers in Genetics that made a good impact, about 200,000 reads, that suggested to recognize aging and the ICD. There was the work of Daria Khaltura from the International Longevity Alliance. All kinds of concerted efforts took place. Also, I personally continued to advocate for this topic. I published, for example, a paper on recognizing aging as a medical condition, methodology and policy. It was quoted 50 times, also sent to some authorities. So from all this successful effort, our advocacy effort, our longevity activism, we're actually able to get to results. And good news, if anybody doesn't know yet, from January 2022, aging is included in the International Classification of Diseases, ICD-11, not as a disease. They didn't want to anger people too much, but as two categories. One is symptoms, symptomatics, and another category is causality or etiology. So basically, you can attack aging according to ICD right now. You can attack aging both as an actual state of health, as an ill state of health, and as a cause of disease, as a cause of other diseases. So any way you like. And I think it's great. It's the actual achievement of longevity activism, ours, others, maybe even people we don't know in the WHO system. But it's there. It's there. Aging is now recognized as a treatable medical condition by the International Classification of Diseases, by the World Health Organization, United Nations. Still, there was a debate recently. Some gerontologists argued that it's still offensive, like they did 10 years ago. You shouldn't call aging a disease because it will, harm some feelings. But they proposed a change to this classification, but still it's a very, very minor, very cosmetic. They propose to replace the main term in the causality category from old age to aging associated decline in intrinsic capacity. It's less clear, but at least it's more measurable at least. So from our standpoint, from attacking aging as a medical condition, it may be even better. So no harm is done. It's in the plan. Still, the main term is old age, but it has about 40 different synonyms, so-called reference terms, including aging, frailty, senility, senile debility, all kinds of things that you can actually address aging, not as a specific symptoms, but as a whole. So that's great. That's a great advancement. But now this is just one small step. The next step will be to actually develop evaluation criteria for this condition of aging that we will be actually able to diagnose and then address medically to measure the improvement. That's what we also argued always, that in order to really treat aging as a medical condition, not just throw around slogans, we actually need some scientific measurable criteria, biomarkers, functional criteria that you can say, yeah, this is the condition, that's how we treat it, that's the improvement, that's the end point we get. So this is still the work that needs to be done through public consultation, through scientific consultation, and that will be probably the work for the next 5 or 10 years. At least the first, or not the first, one of the great steps was done. Aging is in the ICD. so we can at least start building with this on this terminology.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Ilia. And we have a very generous chat from Celeste Castaldo, who writes in the super sticker, "You are amazing." Well, thank you, Celeste. You are amazing as well. And we also have a super chat from Alan Crowley, who is interested in formalizing the Texas Transhumanist Party, because in Texas, a person wishing to start a political party must form an organization and elect a chair and other necessary officers. So right now we have a Facebook page for the Transhumanist Party of Texas. However, this kind of more formal organization, I think, would be beneficial for coordinating pro-longevity activism in that state. And now I would like to ask a question that was posed by Jason Geringer. And Jason, please feel free to elaborate on this. But you were wondering whether Israel has the same kinds of resistance to longevity as we sometimes see in the United States or in European countries. And is the Israeli government more supportive than the US government of pro-longevity efforts? And Jason, please feel free to elaborate.
Well, that's pretty much it. I'm just wondering what the differences are, because Israel, sometimes Israel seems to be like ahead of the game, and I'm just wondering if they're doing better than us. If you guys are doing better than us.
Well, one thing we're doing a little better. Sorry to brag, but if our goal is actual healthy longevity, we're doing better than the United States. The life expectancy in Israel is 83 years. In the United States, it's now, I believe, 79. And also in terms of healthy life expectancy, Israel is one of the best, about 73 years. Of healthy life expectancy. In the United States, I believe it's much less. So in this regard, we were doing better. Sorry. But that's just for you, to get motivated, to get inspired, and get better. And
don't be sorry. Don't be sorry. It's okay.
And in terms of support of longevity science, I would say it's probably also better in Israel. We encountered less straightforward opposition. No, you shouldn't do this. People agree, yes, you should do this. Then they go about their business and don't do this. But at least they agree with you more that it's a worthy goal to extend healthy life. It agrees with Judaism. Actually, in my second book, the longevity promotion, I have a chapter about the agreement of Jewish tradition with life extension as goals. So there's no direct opposition. The problem, once again, not just for Israel, for also other places, is that people, even if people agree, they don't do much or don't do enough. So that's the big problem in Israel still, and I hope it will be better. And in this regard, I would say it's the same, but probably worse in Israel for one simple reason, that the United States, whatever you may think, is still the world-leading country in research of life extension. Even in terms of sheer funding, you have the National Institute of Aging with about, I believe, now $3 billion funding. That's more than probably the entire world combined in terms of aging research funding. Within it, there are a few hundred millions goes to the biology of aging. So in terms of sheer amount of research, the sheer amount of mind working in the United States is beyond comparison. It's the leading force in the world. You should be proud of it and build on it. It's, actually demand that this huge force produces results faster and leads the world by example. So that's what I can say about the comparison. But I would also like to emphasize two other things. First, we all do our parts. Sometimes what we hear in Israel, why do we need life extension research here in Israel when the United States is doing it, or China, or some other country with a huge amount of funding? Why do we need it here? It's often surprises me that people ask that. It's like saying, why do you need a school in Tel Aviv when you have a school in New York or in San Francisco? So we shouldn't close all the schools in Israel, all the universities in Israel, and just import the produce from the United States. So I believe we need life extension research everywhere, and not just in the so-called developed countries, but also in the developing countries around the world. People should make it a global priority, and so in this way we will advance faster, and also through cooperation. We also need to support cooperation between the United States and Israel, between any other countries combined. Actually, one of our advocacy efforts was to improve cooperation and aging research between the United States and Israel. If you go to the site of the Congress, you'll see that a bill for regional cooperation between the US and Israel included a section on aging, research and development on aging, that also was helped by our advocacy in some way. But unfortunately, it was cancelled. This paragraph was cancelled, replaced by COVID. But hopefully it will return. But that's one possibility of advancement, through cooperation. So it shouldn't be just, we're better than you or you're better than us. We should work together and play on our strengths.
Yeah, I would think that's one situation where we'd be more apt to work together. I mean, because it's, it's not like weapons or something where one person has it, you get longevity and, everybody's going to have it. You get longevity. There's no way that both of us are not going to benefit from it, so
Exactly.
I would think. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. If there is one unifying topic that can unite people from every background, I believe, every ideological background, economic background, it's this goal of healthy life extension, and that's also the one where we can all collaborate, with our strengths, with our particular ecosystems. It's not just all the United States or all Israel. It's actually a global movement.
Yeah, even within the U.S. Transhumanist Party itself, that is an issue that unites us. I mean, every organization has, outliers as far as ideologies and that, but longevity unites us all. So that's good. That's why it's kind of our main thing, even though longevity isn't necessarily what brought me to transhumanism and Transhumanist Party. I'm still all for it. I mean, how can it go wrong with longevity?
That's right. Yeah, it's also quite a topic in our advocacy. Should we even back then, also in 2012, I also was proud to contribute to the organization of the International Longevity Party, I believe, which also inspired other parties. And now at least the American branch of the Longevity Party belongs to the U.S. Transhumanist Party. So there was really the beginning of the thought that we really need to advance politically on this topic. Just labs is not enough. Funding labs is not enough. We really need to move into politics. And one of the issues was always, should we focus on longevity or should we spread all over the globe, all of the agenda, enhancement and robotics and everything. I always, once again, there's no recipe, a single recipe for all. I personally and my organizations have always focused on longevity because I believe that's the central avenue of human development. Others will support it, will synergize with it, but that's the main thing to survive. When we talk about longevity, we're speaking about survival. As individuals, as a nation, all your enhancement will not help you if you are dead, basically. So that's why I personally focus on life extension and encourage others. But of course, all the other issues are important. Improving intelligence also very important, also for the life extension. Improving technological capabilities, they also synergize toward improving longevity. But longevity is still the main proxy of our progress.
Yes, thank you, Ilia. And in our chat, Sergei Gubkin wrote that he agrees that there wouldn't be as much religiously motivated resistance to life extension in Israel because Judaism is generally a highly pro-life religion, pro-this life in this world. And he also points out some interesting observations regarding attitudes in Russia. In Russia, he noticed two types of opposition to radical life extension. One is from the patriotic traditionalists, and the other from pro-Western, pro-SJW social justice warrior types who want to emulate Western values, including the kinds of values that these days seem to prioritize group identity politics over constructive progress and the spirit of collaboration that you mentioned. But secular Russians who don't just copy the West also seem more friendly to radical life extension. And along these lines, Celeste Castaldo has a question about what you know, Ilia, regarding the beliefs of the Jewish tradition regarding eternal life and life extension. And Celeste, please feel free to elaborate upon your question.
Hi, Ilia. Yeah, that was just my question. Basically, I was wondering what you know about the Jewish tradition as far as the Jewish traditional beliefs in eternal life and life extension.
All right. Indeed, those two questions kind of combine, and I would recommend my second book, Longevity Promotion, Multidisciplinary Perspectives. It has a whole section about the attitudes of different philosophical and religious systems to the issues of life extension. And it would argue is that not just in Judaism, but in basically every philosophical religious tradition, there are undercurrents that support life extension. Once again, it's undercurrents. It's not the Jewish tradition, the Christian tradition. In every tradition, there are undercurrents that are against and for it. So we just need to reinforce those undercurrents that are for it. Also in Judaism, you can hear that people have to live until 120 and that's it. But in the same Jewish tradition, you also find sources that support indefinite life extension. For example, one of the major authorities, the Jewish philosophical authorities, Maimonides, Moshe ben Maimon, he spoke exactly that there is no predetermined end point of life, that the life can be always extended as long as we keep our bodily humors in equilibrium. In balance, basically, in today's terms, we supply the demands or correct the deficits that are created in our body. In that way, we can continue deficit. That's Maimonides, the most respected Jewish rationalist philosopher, religious philosopher. But you can even find a source about speak about immortality proper. For example, the oral tradition about the loose bone, the bone, the actual bone in the human body from which resurrection will proceed and which can also not be destroyed. There's a story in Talmud that you could actually do experiments and it really couldn't be destroyed. So there's also the tradition about the land of luz, where people are immortal, basically do not age, do not die. If somebody is tired, they just remove from this land and can proceed in the usual way. So there are undercurrents. I'm sure some religious Jewish people are not even aware of those stories, of those texts. But we need to publicize them. We need to reinforce those undercurrents. And the same way would be in Christianity. Also, it would be a big mistake to think that Christianity is against it. The Christianity, if there is such a thing, there are also undercurrents in Christianity, in Protestantism, Catholicism, in Pravoslav Christianity in Russia that are for it. And the same, by the way, is also in Islam. Also, I have a chapter about the pro-longevity attitudes in Islam. You can find it there as well. Quite good arguments that actually there is no limit on human longevity. That the patriarchs lived very long. It's also in the Islamic tradition. And as well as in atheism. In atheism, you can find people who are absolutely fine to die and be eaten by worms, and also atheists who really want to continue this existence. So you couldn't say that that it's the atheist versus religious issue. You can be friends and advance it together with everybody. That's one of my points that I've been making in my advocacy. So that's the answer, I hope. So basically, once again, the point is that if there's one thing that can unify us all, it's the pursuit of health and longevity, regardless of creed or regardless of our philosophical conditions, because that's the basic human drive of survival. That's really at our core, to survive as long as possible. So that there's no opposition to that.
Yes, thank you very much, Ilia. And I've linked here in the chat the article that you wrote, Longevity and the Jewish Tradition, for those who would like to read more about the connections. And Daniel Twett also echoes your comments about Christian transhumanism. He sees a big future for the Christian transhumanist discussion, or interfaith transhumanism more generally. So I think those of us in the U.S. Transhumanist Party who have spoken with adherents of various religions who do embrace transhumanism and radical life extension do see that there are possibilities and technological innovations whose advocacy can unite all of us despite very different theologies or lack thereof, in the case of atheists such as myself. So Jose has a question along the lines of this discussion. So Jose, please proceed.
Yes, thank you. In fact, I'm very interested in the issue of religion and also financing. Well, first of all, let me tell you, Ilia, my book has been published in the first Muslim country, in Turkey. And now we am working on an Arabic version. In fact, I am going in a few days to Dubai to make a presentation about immortality. But they told me immortality might be too much of a radical term, so I should use radical life extension. Anyway, this is in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates. And I want to link this between the Arabs and the Israelis, because Nir Barzilai, he said in 2020 that there would be some major announcements about financing from Arab groups and that he could be involved as a chief scientific officer. Excuse me. Simultaneously, I have seen several foundations being created. One actually in Saudi Arabia. I don't know if you have seen this. This is big news. They are just making the website. It's not even available yet. It is called Evolution Foundation. It's Evolution Foundation. It is in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia, and it's going to have billions of dollars from the Saudi Arabian government to finance longevity. Check it out. It will be out soon. The website Evolution Foundation in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. But in Dubai also there are big money being invested in rejuvenation, longevity technologies. So how much do you know about this from these wealthy groups in the United Arab Emirates, in Saudi Arabia, and in other places, like also I hear in Kuwait, for example, and Qatar? But how much do you know about that? And what was Nir Barzilai's foundation that he was referring to? Is the one in Dubai, the one in Saudi Arabia, or something else that has not come up yet?
Okay, first of all, the fact that this topic is raised in those countries does not surprise me at all. Usually, the pursuit of longevity does correlate with wealth, with the quality of life. It doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me also that it's raised in Muslim countries. Definitely, once again, even if you read my chapter on life extension in Islam, yes, there are some passages in Islam in the Quran that say that people have to die, but also with some exegesis, some Muslim scholars try to argue around it that they die, but they don't really die. That the kingdom of heaven can be on earth. When those technologies come, all those theologies will adjust. You can be sure of that. So at least there's nothing inherent in Islam that opposes it. There is definitely undercurrents that support it. About the actual collaboration, I'm actually not well aware of those initiatives. I know that there are now initiative to promote biotechnology, regenerative medicine in United Arab Emirates, also in collaboration with Israel. Israel, who would have thought, even 3 or 4 years ago. Big friends now, Israel and United Arab Emirates. The people flying all the time here and there. So you can see that the situation can change also in terms of politics, in terms of cooperation. So definitely, but it's still in the future. Let's hope it happens very soon. I'm not well aware of those particular initiatives. We've been trying to raise this topic in the Arab-speaking communities for many years. Right now, what we can see right now is that there's almost no materials in Arabic on life extension, and we've been always trying to create more of them. There was one joint initiative with Morocco that was involved with actually one of the members of the International Longevity Alliance in Morocco, when we tried to create more materials on life extension in Arabic. Right now, it's not it's not in the public mind, probably in the much less than in the West. At least in the level of mass education, at the level of mass consumption, much less than in the United States and Israel, and we need more of it. But hopefully, thanks to those initiatives, there'll also be more massive spread. But once again, let's keep in mind that those countries, those oil countries, are not the whole Muslim world, not the whole Arab-speaking world. We actually, I believe, we need to spread everywhere, not just there, but also in other places like Egypt, Morocco, and Pakistan, everywhere.
Yes, thank you for that response, Ilia. And in our chat, our friend Sergei Gubkin writes that he has heard about some Muslim transhumanists from Kazakhstan and Albania, as well as Bosnia. So this is good news that transhumanism is making inroads in the Islamic world. And I think it makes sense as the Islamic world develops technologically and economically that more people there would be inclined toward more scientifically rigorous and scientifically focused ideologies like transhumanism and like life extensionism. So I think this is quite a promising development. And David Shoemaker emphasizes that Malaysia is another country where we have a burgeoning interest in transhumanism. Of course, our great friend and now director of foreign relations, Sharifuddin Ahmed Rana, is a strong supporter of the U.S. Transhumanist Party, and he is based in Malaysia, as is his World Talent Economy Network. So thank you for that insight. And David, you had a question about some of the guests whom Ilia has spoken with, and you were wondering whether some of the guests were particularly intriguing, or you said elusive, and in what way do you think they could be elusive sometimes?
Yeah, hi. So having listened to many of your YouTube videos, and I'm just wondering, just thinking about getting people to appear on those videos or to interview people for books, or you mentioned gatherings too. So I'm sure that you would interview people for perhaps speaking positions. So over the years, I'm just curious if there's a story that stands out, maybe somebody that was really elusive to track down to get to appear in one of those venues, or some interesting backstory. But you've been doing this so long, you got to have at least one.
Oh, all right, no problem. You want one elusive person? How about Mossad General Rafi Tan? Actually, the founder of our association, of our VETIC association, the Movement for Longevity and Quality of Life. If anybody does know who Rafi Tan is, look at the Wikipedia. He's the person who was responsible for bringing Adolf Eichmann, the perpetrator of the Holocaust, to justice in Israel, where he was hanged. So he's quite a figure in Israel. Mossad general, also the founder and is the later life founder of the Israeli Pensioners Party. In 2007, he actually won about I believe 8% or 10% of seats in the Knesset with the Pensioners Party, because the people were tired of all the usual agendas, and they wanted to advance the cause of healthy aging, basically. But then this initiative subsided, but still he was interested, and he was very interested in life extension. It wasn't open, but it became more open in time, and I was very happy to get in touch with him, to start collaboration with him. So I joined his Vetic association. He departed about 2 years ago. About 3 years ago. 3 years ago in March 2019. But it was a great collaboration. So if you wanted an important figure and an interesting figure, he's the one, because he's really one of the I would even say he's really a national heroes. The person who played such a big role in the development of the country. And yes, this person was interested in life extension. He told even that he discussed it with some high-standing figures I would even mention that they were also interested. And yes, together we advanced it. We discussed it with more people, and I believe he was very important for actually bring our association to the mainstream with the goals of healthy longevity. In 2018, in 2017, when he was 90 years old, he published some kind of summary of his deeds, what he did, like bring Ahmed to justice. I also mentioned, promoting healthy longevity in Israel. So I was very proud. Also mentioned myself. So that was at least one person, one interesting person that I was privileged to cooperate. But there are many others. So basically, the point is that you can actually, if you get in touch with people, if you speak with people, you can find allies, and even in unexpected places.
Oh, that's an inspiring story. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, David. And David had another question with regard to aging as a medical condition. Did that designation within the ICD-11 change any flow of investment money in Israel, to your knowledge, Ilia?
Not yet. First of all, it just happened on. It came into effect on January 1st. So just a little more than a month. That's one thing, and the second thing, not many people are aware of it. In terms of advocacy, activism, I would even make a stronger campaign to even make people aware that this change came into effect, and that we can build on that. But in terms of funding, nothing changed, because once again, old age was in the ICD even before. You can read my article from 1917. It discusses this whole situation with aging in the ICD. Old age was there before. It was used as a kind of a garbage code. It was the official term for this category, the garbage code. When people didn't know the cause of death, they said, he died from old age, and that's what was the use of this code. And now it's improved, and now we have all kinds of codes that can be actually used by a clinician, like frailty, fragility, aging-related disease. Now it's much better, but still there are very little clinical evaluation criteria to make this code actually useful. So I believe once again that will be the next stage of work to create those evaluation criteria to be able to actually use this code in practice. And that's what all we also have to do as activists, as advocates, to promote this kind of development. But right now, nothing changed in practice right now. But at least in terms of terminology, it's a big win for us, and we can build on that. But first, we first need to know that it happened. Second, we need to make the next steps. Otherwise, it will still be on paper, like the old age of ICD-11, of ICD-10.
Yes, and to elaborate upon that, did the introduction as of January 1st, 2022 of the aging associated code open up the possibility for Israeli regulatory agencies to actually review a proposed treatment or medicine that aims to target aging itself, at least the medical adverse effects of aging, rather than a specific disease like diabetes or cancer or dementia?
Right. So it's not just for Israel. It would be the same for every other country, for Europe, for United States. No, it didn't happen because once again, the people don't know that we even have these categories of aging related and aging itself. You know, we have to not to forget we have two categories for aging right now: as a causality and as a symptom. So we need to make them aware. It will be our work, you know, to build on that, to actually use these codes to advance the specific research progress. It hasn't happened so far. I hope it will happen, but once again, it will be our work. Nobody else will do it for us. That's one way to answer it. And the second way, we tried to advance this research programs even before that, but once again, not through the code, but through developing evaluation criteria. Once again, we started this special research topic in Frontiers in Genetics on evaluation criteria. I believe that's the practical way, even regardless of the code. Once again, if there is a code but you don't have any diagnostic criteria for aging, it's no use. You cannot treat something that you cannot diagnose. In the usual disease, you have a set of evaluation criteria that you can say, yes, this is cancer, this is the cure for cancer. In aging, you don't have anything like that. So that's what we have to develop. So yes, the ICD code help or can help, but it's not the main part of an issue. It's not or not the only part of an issue.
Yes, thank you for that discussion, Ilia. And we have a generous super chat from John H., who says, keep it up. Thank you very much to John. Now, in terms of the aging associated code and the task of informing regulatory agencies, essentially, because they don't automatically know necessarily, do you think that will be done essentially by scientists who devise experimental protocols and submit them for review by the regulatory agencies and essentially say, look, this is actually permitted according to the new ICD classification?
Yes, I believe the way to advance would be actually to start to initiate actual experiments, actual tests directed to aging, like the one that Professor Barzilai started. He didn't use the ICD code, he used the multimorbidity as a proxy. Basically, he said that if we are able to prevent or postpone the multiple age-related disease, we'll be able to we're actually intervening into aging, because aging is the root cause of all those diseases. That's a proxy approach. I believe it's still the most practical approach, as long as we don't have the agreed clinical criteria for aging. But you know, it's one direction, and similar experiments can be done elsewhere. But I believe the way forward will be to develop specific evaluation criteria for aging itself and start a request to start testing on that, and it will be done. It can be done, definitely. But once again, the problem is with sponsors. The problem with the sponsors, and here we go back to the issue why people don't invest in aging research. Why don't people fund aging research? Now there's more funding than before, but it's still nearly not enough. And it goes beyond the codes. You know, the codes is just, you know, some kind of trapping that can help or not help. The main problem is that there's still too many obstacles to directly tackling aging scientifically, psychologically, societally. So, for example, right now in the area of COVID, people should understand that aging is the main root cause, the main risk factor for COVID. Why didn't we see a massive testing of anti-aging treatments to mitigate COVID? Actually, I'm not aware of any clinical trials for anti-aging treatment against COVID. There were reports here and there, and there is good feasibility that those treatments like rapamycin, metformin, they could significantly reduce mortality in COVID. We didn't see any massive clinical trials for that. Why? Once again, the people are not so fast to fund and engage in clinical trials on aging, but hopefully it will come eventually. Also, thanks to our work, to advocacy, we shouldn't leave it all to scientists. We should also advocate around it to build up the support to kind of cheerlead these efforts.
Now, with regard to indicators to use for biological aging, my friend Dr. Bill Andrews, whom we've had as a guest on this Virtual Enlightenment Salon series as well, likes to say that, at least he did like to say before Betty White died, that to him the empirical manifestation of aging reversal would be if Betty White or somebody of analogous advanced age walks onto a stage and looks like she's 25. So do you think that's a possible essentially set of tests? If somebody looks unusually young for that person's chronological age, that this would be an indicator that some aging reversal has been achieved?
Well, looks young is not a problem. We have cosmetics industry, we have plastic surgery. Look young is not a problem at all. Functioning young, the young cognition is much more of a problem. It's still not possible with the current means. A significant rejuvenation in functional terms or in basic biological terms. If that happened, that would be wonderful. That would bring a massive support along the road, but then it would also mean that we're actually there, that we've done our job, and there's actually no more need to advance. So now we're trying to advocate for something that's almost there but not there yet. If it's there, if somebody is able to rejuvenate himself to the age of 25, then all this discussion is futile. We were all standing in line to the pharmacy to get those treatments. Right now, we were at the stage where it has not happened, but there's a good chance that will happen. But still, there's a certain leap of faith, a certain uncertainty about it, and that's why it is so important to invest our effort to bring our resources to the movement, because otherwise it may not happen. So basically, it hinges on us. It depends on us if it happens or not.
Yes, indeed. And I agree. It does depend on us. And it does seem like there need to be some sort of subtler indicators that show that we are making progress, even if we don't have 90-year-olds looking like 25-year-olds yet. And of course, a lot of people try various approaches to, at least in their view, have a reasonable possibility of slowing down or even reversing biological age, though it's still questionable as to which regimens work to do so reliably. But along these lines, Pam Keefe has a question. She asks, are you doing anything to advance your own life extension? And she would love to hear what your personal approach is.
Right. What do I have to eat? No, I'm actually probably the same mind as Aubrey is. If he's asked this kind of question, he says, "No, I'm doing my usual things." I'm probably a little more cautious than Aubrey. Sorry to say, I try to eat healthy and do some exercise. Not always it is possible, but I understand that unless we were able to devise some radical intervention or some essential interventions into aging, all the old recipes like rest and then sleep and exercise will probably not help us extend our life significantly. There is still, I believe, a strong genetic component to our longevity that we will need to intervene into the genetic level. So what I do is I try not to get crazy, as we say, not to do anything very harmful to myself, but that's about it. But what I do is I try to advocate for as much longevity science as possible, in the hope that it will bring us more um, uh, more effectual means to intervene into our longevity. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend anything except the usual thing that were known to all our ancestors and not always followed. By the way, that's another point why aging research is not supported as strongly as we wish. Is even if people know all those recipes, like healthy lifestyle, all the preventive measures, they still don't follow them until it's too late. So this kind of basic glitch in our mindset that we need to overcome. But at least I hope we'll move in that direction.
Yes, absolutely. It is important to follow common sense advice and knowledge regarding healthy behavior, and especially avoid taking reckless risks. Mike Lazine points out that not drinking alcohol excessively or doing any kinds of drugs that are not for medical purposes can help keep lifespans longer, at the very least, not shorten them prematurely. And I'm curious in this regard, Ilia, do you think the divergence in the paths for life expectancy between the United States and Israel, as well as other countries like Japan, for instance, where in those countries the life expectancy seems to be growing still, whereas in the United States it has stagnated and now, unfortunately, even declined a bit. Do you think that difference is due to lifestyle choices by large segments of the population, or what else might be happening that would explain this very unusual phenomenon with regard to the United States?
I would say almost certainly. If we see that the decline in life expectancy in the United States is not due to an increase in age-related diseases. Even it's mostly due to the various kinds of addictions that are afflicting the American population, the opioids, and all kinds of other addictions. So I believe that there's a deep connection between addiction and aging. Even if you look at some of the theories of aging, for example, the elevation theory of Vladimir Dillman, you see there is an important correlation between addiction and aging in terms of aging mechanisms, having to do with homeostasis, with hypothalamus. We won't go deeper into it, but there is a correlation, there is a similarity. But I believe, in practical terms, curbing the addictions will go a long way toward extending healthy life expectancy. And the life expectancy, probably in Israel, we have less of addictions. People drink less alcohol or drink in moderation, wine. Once in a week on Shabbos, less smoking. The diet is probably better. The Mediterranean diet that we have, people exercise more. Then also, Israel is a younger population. When we speak about life extension and longevity, we also have to keep in mind various variables, both the life expectancy, which is another way of saying mortality, as well as fertility, as well as the number of the offspring. And in this regard, Israel is at the forefront of the developed world. We have the highest fertility in the developed world. In the OECD, about three people per woman. So at least in terms of demographic, we are not threatened by the silver tsunami as great as Japan, for example, where the fertility is about 1.2 or 1.3, or Europe or 1.5. It's already at the brink of the population, and it is similar in the United States, close to that. So all these factors play together that Israel, demographically, at least, is in a good place. And also, once again, I'm saying not to brag, but to encourage others to think also of other variables like fertility, like other lifestyle factors that may improve not just individual health longevity, but also the national demographic situation.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. This was quite fascinating. And we have some comments from our viewers. Ellen Crowley writes that diet, exercise, rest, and maintaining mental clarity are some of the basic approaches that could help render lifespans longer than they would otherwise be. But Didier Cornell points out that we progress so much in many domains, but not for maximal lifespan, even for other mammals besides humans. At least that is what Didier has stated in this comment. And I do think a feasible objective, though quite an ambitious objective for humankind during this decade, would be to try to get one person to break Jean Calment's record of 122 years and perhaps survive to 125 years of age. What do you think would need to be done in order to achieve this and break this barrier? Right now, the longest living person is Kane Tanaka, who is just over 119 years, and if she survives for another 2 months, she'll be the second oldest person who ever lived. So how can we get Kane Tanaka to live to be 125?
Yes, first of all, I think we just need to improve the base. We need to improve the base. If more people live longer, in the general population, there will be greater chance that there will be outliers. There will be people who will live extremely long. That's the miracle of Jean Calment, that in the population where people don't live to the 70s or 80s, she lived to 122. But if more people live to the age of 100 or more, there will be greater chance that they will have super centenarians. And actually, I think this is happening, at least in terms of centenarians. Even in Japan, we see that an anecdote. Earlier, every centenarian in Japan was given a silver plate, and now there are so many of them that they just run out of silver plates. So just they just give them some cheaper utensils because there are too many of them. We see really the amount of centenarians is growing significantly in developed countries. So I hope more and more people will at least reach the age of 100. I think it's completely feasible for almost everyone who is alive now to reach to the age of 100, even with the most basic means to decrease mortality. Because once again, when we speak about life expectancy, we speak about mortality. Just another way of describing mortality. When people die less from various causes, they will automatically increase their life expectancy. And I believe it is possible to expect a life of 100 years easily. And in a population where most or many people are 100, we can expect to also have people over 120 or 125. And that's just by the means that we already have. I believe that already, if we use the technology that we already have, we are able to reach this. But once again, we are speaking in terms of in longer terms. I believe exceeding maximum life expectancy lifespan is possible. There is no law in nature that says that 122 years and 3 months is the absolute limit for human being. There's the law in nature that states it, like in physics, you cannot fly faster than 300,000 kilometers per second, and that's it. You don't have it for 122 years. There's no biological limit. There's an evolutionary limit, I would say, and a population limit. We evolved in a certain environment. Now we live in a certain type of environment, society that simply don't allow us. People simply don't live longer than this statistically. But there is no law and no reason to assume that it's fixed, that it cannot be improved.
Yes, thank you, Ilia. And this is an important insight to keep in mind, that what is today considered a maximal lifespan is actually a statistical phenomenon rather than a built-in law of nature. It's just we have, as we go about our daily lives, certain probabilities of experiencing events that would end our lives. And as we become older, those probabilities increase exponentially. And yet, somebody could be alive for another year and have some probability, however small, of not experiencing any of these deadly phenomena. And that's how the supercentenarians are able to be as old as they are. Now, I would also ask if Art Ramon has any questions.
Yes, actually, I do. Yeah, here in the United States, I know the military was looking into longevity treatments for soldiers because it takes a lot of training to get them up to speed, and then maybe they have a good 10 years and their bodies start to fall apart. Now, in Israel, you have mandatory military service, so you have people who are in their prime years, like early 20s, who are having to give up a lot of things in order to serve in the military. So couldn't you make the argument that the government and the military should compensate the people who are forced to serve in the military with longevity treatment to offset the fact that they're having to give up those years serving for the military, especially like the females who, that's their prime reproductive years.
Guys, was it me?
Yes, I think we lost you for a bit, but Art Ramon was asking essentially about the implications of conscription, universal conscription in Israel during people's prime years. And Art Ramon, you may wish to restate your question a bit.
Yes, I was saying, couldn't you make the argument? Couldn't you make the argument that the government should compensate soldiers because they're forced to serve in the military during their prime years, especially females? That's their prime reproductive years. So, is there any way you can do that and get the government and the military to fund longevity treatment so they can compensate soldiers?
Nice question. First of all, the underlying point is that yes, the military should be interested in developing longevity treatments for various reasons. Also to keep the people longer in the force. They invested so much in the training that they would benefit from keeping them longer in the force and good health and good capacity. All those arguments were made. Actually, in my book, I have an extensive reference note on the longevity research that was done by DARPA. The things you would be surprised to find. The book is from 2014, so even back then. They were interested, and this interest still continues. There's definitely a rationale for the military to be involved in this research, and then hopefully also share it. Not just to make super soldiers, but eventually to trickle down the results also to the public, just to have the proper controls in place to make it happen. The same argument could be made in Israel. We tried to make it, with it fell on deaf ears, but the specific suggestion, to compensate for people with longevity treatments. First of all, we need to have them to give, and they're not even willing to invest in their development. It's a far-reaching proposal, but basically the connection between military and longevity is sound. It is paradoxical. There was a study in Israel that actually argued that Israeli longevity is in part assisted by the military service. So actually, people exercise and learn discipline, and so that contributes to their longevity. So join the army and live long. Kind of the paradoxical outcome of this study. I don't think we need to join the army to live longer, but we can learn some of the principles, like self-discipline and exercise to apply to the civilian population. So that could be at least one implication of this connection.
That would be different if you'd go to the army to live longer, And if the life expectancy of the soldiers was more than the people, that would be
right.
Weird.
Yes, go to the army to live longer unless there's a war, but maybe that could motivate the members of the armed forces themselves in opposing attempts to embroil a country in a war.
Exactly, Gennady. Also in my book, I have some example from Germany. People who go to battle have to be fit. So we even have to distinguish between fitness and longevity. Of course, fitness contributes to longevity, but if fitness is the purpose, apart from any other consideration, the fit people are good for battle, and where they can die more readily, and they can even bring the population effects down the road, devastating population effects. So just fitness is not enough. You have to accompany it with the goal of peace, with the goal of longevity. That's why I also argue that longevity synergizes with other human values. Even if you look at the Human Development Index, the Gini index, you see that longevity goes hand in hand with the quality of life, with education. So longevity is a good proxy, good engine to invent all those values that humans have.
Yes, indeed. And I completely agree. Longevity is compatible with all other human values that are worth pursuing, and indeed is the prerequisite for those values to be achieved. So now David Shoemaker wonders, with regard to an approach toward greater longevity for those who might still have a high probability of experiencing biological death under today's definition, what do you think about cryonics as a strategy?
I think it is definitely worth the insurance policy. Right now, let's be frank, there's a good chance we will not make it, or many of us will not make it. The way things are developing, the speed that longevity therapies are developing, as you said at the outset, the advocacy, the public mindset is moving fast in our favor. The longevity technology is not moving as fast as we hoped. So there's a good chance that we will not make it, or some of us. So cryonics is definitely a good insurance policy. At least, the chances of coming back are not very great, probably. But still, there are chances. I will not go into why it may not work. In cryonics, even with the best technology, even if we are able to revive people. There may be reasons that the societal reasons that people will not be revived, even because of the longevity of specific organizations. We learned that the organizations tend to disappear from public life. So it's a kind of insurance policy, not a very high premium, but definitely a legitimate pursuit. I personally, I'm not involved in cryonics. I even had some thoughts of maybe starting cryonics in Israel, but I cannot do everything. It takes a significant time, so I prefer to advocate for geroprotective therapies, for geroscience, for health and longevity. But definitely, if somebody is willing to advance it in Israel or elsewhere, I will be, not against it.
Yes, thank you for that response. And I think that is consistent with a lot of other longevity advocates, like Aubrey de Grey, for instance, who also is of a similar mindset toward cryonics, even though his primary focus is on the SENS approach and rejuvenation biotechnology. So not getting to the point where one needs to be cryopreserved, but it is still a valid backup option, or so-called plan B, for people to pursue. Luis Arroyo wonders, could advocating for longevity be tied in with passing policy that increases quality of life and life expectancy? And the example he gives is getting healthcare to everybody. What are your thoughts on this?
Our association is called the Movement for Longevity and Quality of Life. So definitely we believe this should go hand in hand. And I think that the things are connected. Yes, we definitely need to improve the base, also to go to the higher level. I think I understand where Luis is driving at. I do believe in the more egalitarian distribution of those technologies from the outset, even at the point of development. We need to think of ways that those technologies will be equitably or universally distributed. It's been a very common opposition to life extension, that it will all only be available to the rich. The common argument is, sure, at the beginning it will be available to the rich, but then it will trickle down. I don't believe it. I don't take it. At least at the initial stage, where people will die who will not have access, and that's, I believe, is not a desirable scenario. So I believe we need to think of universal, or at least as wide as possible, access from the beginning, already at the point of development. I believe we need more public initiatives that will give more people the entitlement to those therapies. So all these are part of our strategic planning, a part of our advocacy. But we definitely need the base. If people don't have access to the most basic healthcare, you cannot expect them to have access also to radical life extension technology. So we need to improve the base even now, because once again, health inequality didn't start or doesn't start with life extension. It's existing phenomenon. It didn't start because of life extensionists, even though we're often blamed for it. With life extension technologies, we will create the huge inequality. There's already the inequality. It can only grow with more technologies, but it's already there, and we need to think how to alleviate it, how to improve it, and that will also provide the basis for more radical life extension technologies when they come.
Yes, thank you very much, Ilia. And it's interesting because Aubrey de Grey has stated that once the advantages of radical life extension, particularly the cost savings that it would bring to various medical systems and even pension systems, become apparent to governmental decision makers, they will consider it very costly not to make these treatments universally available, essentially for very low cost or free of charge. Do you agree with that assessment? If we can only persuade enough people in government that these treatments could save a lot on other healthcare costs that are currently used to treat individuals who are biologically aged, that they would agree that, yes, it's sensible to provide rejuvenation treatments to every single one of their citizens, even if they don't have a lot of financial means?
Basically yes, but it's more complex than it sounds. There are all kinds of elements that are not always taken into account. For example, you will be surprised, but at least in our advocacy, in our talks with high-level decision makers, the money aspect, the dividend aspect is not at the top of their mind. They would agree immediately. Yes, it's important. It's important to have people healthy for themselves, even for their close ones. So there's no argument there. Actually, you would be surprised that they argue. No, we want people to die, but save money. No, money. Okay, it's important. It's at least in the talks, money is not such a big deal for those people. But then they don't proceed with the programs. They agree with you, but then nothing is done. So there are other considerations, other agendas that simply displace this one. So that's one way of thinking of it. Second of all, right, you should give it universal to everybody, but you don't know exactly how much will it cost when this therapies first emerge. But you have to put the money for the research right now. So how much should you put and how much you will get? There's no way to estimate this. So that's a complex issue. Maybe even I would say even the unorthodox things in our circles, so that perhaps the preventive medicine is not so cheap. Can you imagine? Actually, if even now you see that the preventive treatments going to the gym and then eating healthy, it costs much more than eating junk and not exercising. So maybe even the preventive treatment is not so cheap and so cost effective. It helps people to live longer and healthy, but in terms of economics, it may not even work out. We still need to work out all those models. Even among the best economists, the estimates vary. What is cost effective for life extension? I believe that there's even too little done for the basic analysis, for the basic cost effectiveness analysis of life extending therapies. First of all, we don't know what they are, and so it is difficult to evaluate cost effectiveness. So it's all difficult questions. It's in economic terms. But I would say even let's keep it aside, because once again, even in talks with high-level politicians, they say, let's keep the money aside. First of all, we need to make people healthy. So that's the main reason to develop those therapies, and then the money consideration will come later.
It's interesting that politicians speak this way, and yet you mentioned, for instance, in the investment community, people generally don't tend to invest in projects or technologies with more than a 5-year time horizon. And it seems that politicians have a similar time horizon too, which is defined by their reelection prospects or the expected lengths of their terms. This is where term limits might actually be detrimental, in that a politician expects to be in office only for a certain length of time, and then whatever happens afterward can be blamed on the successor politicians and not on the politician who might have actually engendered the initial failures that then led to a crisis later on. So how, both for the investment world and the political world, would you suggest it might be possible to lengthen these time horizons?
Right. That's the big one. For the investment minded people, we've encountered all along. People don't want to donate; they want to invest to get the return on investment, and you have to promise them. And if you don't deliver on the promise, so be it. It's not just the problem of life extension; it's the problem of much of the biotech or much of high tech. So sometimes the promises are not fulfilled, and the people may be willing to invest if you don't make those promises. And we have to understand that the aging, at least in aging research, we still need to make a lot of basic studies still without any promise of return on investment, and people aren't willing to give money if they are not promised the return on investment. And it's the same way for politicians, at least in terms of discussion. That understand that you should support it, but when it comes to practice, as we saw, not much is done. So yes, it is an issue. It is an issue. People do want immediate results. People do want you to give them the pill, if not tomorrow, at least in 3 years. If you're not promising them, they don't give them. Maybe we're too honest. Maybe we should promise, but then it can backfire. If you don't deliver the pill, the whole program can be cancelled. Yeah, it's an issue. People want immediate results. People want the longevity pill now. There also are activists, also advocates, not advocates, but let's call them health enthusiasts. They want to take a supplement or something now. It is understandable. It's human nature, to want immediate results, to see immediate results. And how do we change this perspective? By education, by discussion. We explained the actual state of affairs in aging research. We explained that actually it may take longer than expected. We advocate for long-term strategic planning. It's not an easy task. It's easier said than done, but at least we have to make an effort.
Yes, indeed. And hopefully venues like this one, the Virtual Enlightenment Salon, will help persuade more people to adopt a more enlightened, longer-term outlook on the future prospects of longevity, and support research, support experimentation that might not necessarily bear fruit immediately, but could have profound implications decades into the future. Now, as our time is approaching an end, we are in the near 7-minute range toward the end of our salon. I wanted to bring up one more comment from a viewer, and then we should head into closing remarks. So Flying Donkey 420 notes that acceptance of death feels like procrastination. People say they'll accept it eventually, but not in the moment, and that deadline keeps getting pushed further as they age. Do you find that sort of response from many of the people you speak with, that they have adopted a kind of philosophical, detached acceptance of death, and that doesn't mean they want to die tomorrow, but they say things like, well, eventually life will become tiresome, and I wouldn't mind dying at 90, even though if they were actually 89, they might have a different perspective.
Yes, definitely, definitely. I don't have time for fables and parables, but actually, there is a fable about a man who lived in the land of immortals. He said, I don't want to live there. I'm ready to die. And then he went to sea, and when the shark was about to eat him, he said, "No, I want to go back." So that's human psychology. It's very paradoxical. Yes, we actually want to live as long as possible, but on the other hand, we kind of accept our mortality at some basic level. And at the same time, we also think that we do possess immortality, that we will never die. And at the same time, we think that nothing can be done about aging. All kinds of conflicting, paradoxical mindsets coexist in us. We're humans. We kind of have multiple ways of thinking. So definitely we need to explain that actually the continuum, it's all about basic survival. There's no difference between wanting to live tomorrow and wanting to live indefinitely. It's all about basic survival. The only issue is our technological capabilities, our intellectual capacities that will not allow us to do it. So we need to first of all look at ourselves, what can we contribute, and also look at our society, how we can influence society to contribute to this goal.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Ilia. And we have some audience feedback. Zach Richardson, our director of publication, on the question of the politician's reluctance, notes the politician also does not need to worry about what is best for the area he is governing long term. He is more likely to do anything for short-term gains as the immediate returns lead to re-election. And that's the tragedy of the short-termist perspective, particularly when it comes to longevity research. And Alan Crowley notes this is all the more reason for the USTP. And Brian Brain says, here's to profound fruits in what we are trying to cultivate. So now,
Yes.
Ilia.
To add that that's exactly our purpose. That's exactly our mission, to bring public attention, because politicians only respond to public interest. When they see public interest, they will act. When they don't, they will go to areas where they do see public interest. So that's our goal as activists, as longevity activists, political, social, to actually build up the grassroots for politicians to react.
Thank you very much, Ilia. And now we have 3 minutes remaining in our virtual Enlightenment Salon, and I would invite you to provide closing remarks. What else would you like to say to supplement this conversation? And what should our viewers expect in terms of your work in the next 20 years?
Well, I hope it's more than 20 years. At least I think that 20 years is reasonable to say that I'll be active and continuing this work. I think it is important to keep doing this work in every way possible, having more gatherings, having more publications, convincing more decision makers, convincing more public. Everything counts. Every little effort counts. Often in our community, we are too perfectionist. We think either I'm making incredible breakthrough, I'm not doing anything. No, every little contribution counts. It's okay that my contribution is less than other people or more than of someone else. It's all coming together. It's all synergizing into a massive movement. That's how all social movements work. Everyone contributes, and I hope our discussions continue and our movement grows. And once again, not just in terms of awareness of public mindset, but in terms of actual therapies. That's what we have to keep in mind: the actual life expectancy, the actual healthy life expectancy. Let's move it. That's what I can say.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Ilia. And it is indeed my hope that in the next 20 years, hopefully even less time than that, we will start seeing actual therapies being deployed that will render it quite obvious to many in the general public that lifespan does not have a fixed upper limit, that it can indeed be extended and periods of good health can be extended as well. So I would like to thank you for joining us. I would like to thank our panel and our audience for a wonderful, engaging conversation as usual. Daniel Twett says, may all endings be temporary and provisional. And indeed, for our virtual Enlightenment Salon, the ending will be temporary and provisional because you will be able to join us every Sunday at 1 p.m. U.S. Pacific Time, 4 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time for thought-provoking, multidisciplinary conversations about how we can enhance the future of humanity together. Thank you so much, Ilia, for your 20 years of longevity activism. Let's make it 200 years, though hopefully by that time we'll have reached longevity escape velocity, and it will be more about maintaining our infrastructure for making that possible. So until next time, everyone, live long and prosper.
Thank you.